Welcome to Surrender School. This is the science of Step 1.
Okay, welcome back. Today we're going to explore part 2 of our physical allergy of the disease. So first, as always, I'm going to go over my caveats. I'm not a medical doctor, a scientist, or expert in the science of obesity and addiction. I am not saying that my way is the right or best way or only way to approach abstinence and food plans. And always check with your doctor before you do anything different with your food plans. Now, last session, we learned that we are both insulin and leptin resistant. Our insulin resistance makes us fatter, and our leptin resistance makes us feel starved and very low energy. We also learned that our insulin resistance raises our brain's setting on our lipostat for how much fat should be on our body. This interplay of hormones provides a feedback loop that is the basis of our physical allergy. This helps to explain why we can't stop eating once we start eating. Today, we're going to look at why we start eating again after we've managed to be abstinent for a while. So are there any questions on last week before we start on this week's topic?
I do not have any questions.
Okay. So, the starvation response. Today, I want to talk about the way this feedback loop of insulin and leptin resistance shows up in our lives, how we experience it, and how we might be better able to deal with it. So we've seen that appetite and adiposity, which is the $5 million word for fatness. So we've seen how our appetite and the amount of fat on our bodies are biological phenomena that are regulated by non-conscious parts of our brains, all the hormones. No matter what people say, our disease is not, underline bold, the result of conscious voluntary decisions. It's not as simple as putting the fork down. Okay, so let's say we've figured out an abstinence and a food plan that seemed to work pretty well for us. We've survived the initial withdrawal, which for me includes headaches, irritability, sometimes nausea. Then we blissfully land on a pink cloud for a while, and we begin to think that this might not be so difficult after all. The food fog's gone, we're following our food plan, we've started losing weight, we're feeling better, and then bam, all hell breaks loose, and you are starving. The food is singing so loudly you cannot hear anything else. You feel like you're going crazy. You know, I've had sponsees text me, I feel like I'm going crazy. What's wrong? I'm going to tell you. You feel like you're going to die if you don't eat everything in the refrigerator right now, this second. This is the starvation response. It's a biochemical process that drives us back into the food after we've been abstinent for a while. It's not lack of willpower that drives us back into the food. It's the starvation response. So I used to experience what I called my 5 alarm fires. I would be sitting on the couch, minding my own business, watching something on Netflix. Then seemingly out of nowhere, my anxiety would skyrocket up. And I would feel twitchy, like something was wrong and I needed to do something or fix it right away. Like the world would end if I didn't do it. Now, these episodes would last anywhere from a couple of minutes to about 20 minutes. I knew that they weren't panic attacks because I've had panic attacks, and these were different. what the hell was going on? That's what I wanted to know. The inability of our brains to see the leptin secreted from our fat stores, in combination with losing some weight, leads to what is called the starvation response. When our brains can't see our leptin because we're resistant, it believes that we have absolutely no fat stores on our body at all. And this is a big survival threat, and we've gone through that. It's an emergency. But when you've been abstinent a while and you are actually losing weight, it's a freaking catastrophe as far as your body and brain are concerned. Not only do you not have any fat stores, but now you're actually losing weight and you are in danger of dying. That is what your brain and body think. Your survival is in jeopardy. Now, leptin resistance and weight loss trigger this powerful conglomeration of biological and psychological responses that work together to make sure we restore that lost fat. This is what the starvation response is for. And this is its whole purpose, is to get us to eat again and regain any weight we have lost. And to do this, the brain makes two important major changes. First, it decreases our energy expenditure, and that is a fancy way of saying the amount of calories that we're burning every day. It decreases the amount of calories that we burn every day. And second, it ramps up our hunger and appetite. So we're going to go over these changes one at a time. First, the starvation response decreases our energy expenditure, the calories that we burn. And it does this by cutting our metabolic rate. Our metabolic rate is the rate of calories we burn for regular bodily maintenance. I'm not talking about working out. I'm talking about sitting on the couch. You are burning calories all the time. For things like that include digestion, body temperature, growing your hair and nails, heartbeat, production of energy in our cells requires caloric expenditure, and replacing old and damaged cells. Now, the brain decreases our overall metabolic rate by decreasing sympathetic nervous system activity. Now, the sympathetic nervous system is just the system that is used in our body that helps us be active. Okay, so it decreases the amount that our body wants to be active. And it also decreases our thyroid hormone levels. Both of these things slow the overall metabolic rate. Remember when you used to blame your thyroid for being fat? Yeah. Well, the starvation response does do that. It decreases our thyroid hormone levels, thereby bringing the metabolic rate down. So this means that our brain decreases the number of calories burned per day for normal metabolism. I'm not talking about working out, just for sitting on the couch. It decreases the calories that we burn every day by around 20%. It varies from individual to individual, but around 20% or so. Because we're starving. We need to conserve energy. So it's cutting back on the amount of energy you're burning. If you're running out of gas in your car, you drive less. Or you get more gas, you eat more. Okay. The brain also cuts back the number of calories burned for any given muscle contraction. Now, this blew me away because I had no idea about this. So for example, and this has to do with purposeful physical activity. If you used to burn 100 calories on the walk that you take every day for exercise, now you will only burn around 75 or 80 calories for that exact same walk. The starvation response adaptation reduces the overall number of calories you burn with any physical activity. That one, I did not know that at all. That one really blew me away. So it decreases the amount of calories you burn at rest, and it decreases the amount of calories you burn when you exercise. Now, it does a third little thing to decrease, to kind of, it's not really decreasing your energy expenditure, but it is a weird little thing that it does. And the brain tells the pancreas in the starvation response to increase insulin secretion regardless of what you eat. It wants you to secrete insulin whether you've got tons of sugar coming in or not. Doesn't matter. And remember that the insulin is a fat storage hormone. So it's the brain is telling the pancreas to increase insulin secretion so that more of what you are eating is stored as fat. It pulls it away from making energy and it stores it as fat because it's trying to keep you alive. This excess insulin is secreted specifically to drive nonstop fat gain. This is solely to make us regain any weight we have lost. Now, are there any questions on this first part of the way that the starvation response works by making us burn less calories?
My sponsee has started a new job that requires a lot of walking. She is very anxious and depressed right now. Part of this is because she doesn't like this job and has to work for financial issues. Can this starvation response be causing some of this? She is eating the same, but exercising way more.
Yeah, yes. If she's still in the process of losing weight, yes. And I'm actually going to go into that, that feeling bad and depressed stuff in a minute, because that is part of the starvation response. Now, the second thing the brain does, the first thing it does is it decreases the amount of calories we burn and it makes us excrete more insulin. The second thing it does in the starvation response is it ramps up our hunger and appetite. It forces us to unconsciously eat more. And it does this in several different ways. The brain increases the secretion of a hormone called neuropeptide Y. This hormone causes massive overeating. But it does more than just that. Neuropeptide Y also increases the storage of excess calories as fat, and neuropeptide Y makes us feel really bad and really uncomfortable until we do eat. Life is very unpleasant until we give in and eat. And this is where I think my 5-alarm fires came from. So the brain makes us feel bad. It's not anything that's going on in our life, even if there are some things in our life that aren't going on the way we would like. Additionally, this is just the starvation response. It wants you to eat, and it will make you feel bad until you do. I was really pissed about that, by the way. The brain also decreases the secretion of the hormone melanocortin. This hormone powerfully suppresses food intake. So a hormone that tells us to stop eating isn't as effective as it was. So the brain secretes a hormone and makes it more effective to cause us to eat, and it decreases the secretion of a hormone that's meant to stop us from eating. So the brain punches the accelerator, the gas pedal, and it cuts the brake lines for our eating. Now, the starvation response also increases our susceptibility to food cues that involve our normal binge foods, high caloric, highly yummy binge foods. So all of a sudden, on our drive to work, when we didn't used to see them, we start seeing all these drive-throughs that have always been there, but we weren't paying attention to them. Now we are exquisitely tuned in to any food cues in our environment. Candy and chips in the checkout lane. Very powerful and instinctive brain regions draw us toward concentrated, quick, easy calories. The food just starts calling you even louder than it used to. And food was always loud for me, but now it was yelling. The brainstem satiety circuits, remember we talked about the satiety system last time. These satiety circuits, these fullness circuits, get shut down in the starvation response. So it's not your imagination. This shutdown ensures that it takes more food to feel full at a meal than it did before you started losing weight. Your brain dampens down your feelings of fullness so you won't feel satisfied until you've eaten enough calories to start regaining the fat. So all you need to know about the starvation response is it decreases the overall number of calories we burn every day at rest and with exercise. It increases our levels of hunger. It decreases our levels of fullness, our feelings of fullness. And it increases our negative emotions and feelings. That crappy thing. Now, don't despair. Don't despair. There are things to do about it. So before we go on, are there any questions on this starvation response?
Yes, I have two.
Okay.
So how long after abstinence is achieved does the starvation response start? Days, weeks, months, and how long will it last?
When I think it starts, or I can speak from my own experience. It started after I lost about 5 to 7 pounds. And it kept going for about 3 or 4 months. And now I was not done losing weight in 3 or 4 months, but it seemed to really be decreased and stop after about 3 or 4 months.
Nice. Okay, the next one. So when we begin to follow our food plan and we have the starvation response, should we not have an exercise regimen?
Okay, that's a very interesting question. And this is the way I always answer that question. And it really doesn't have anything to do with the starvation response. If you are an exerciser and you enjoy it, keep doing it regardless, okay? If it helps you, if it decreases your stress, if you enjoy it, any of those things, keep doing it. If you have to force yourself to exercise, I would wait. I would concentrate on my abstinence and my food plan for a while. And then after the starvation response calms down a bit and the hormones start getting re-regulated and your brain is registering the leptin, you'll want to start getting up off the couch. Now, I'm not saying you're going to want to go run a marathon, but you're going to have less of a negative response to moving. So when that happened for me, I just started walking. And then it was later on after that that I added other things to my exercise regimen. When I achieved food neutrality, I was able to do some other things with exercise. So that's the way I answer that question every time. And it really doesn't have anything to do with the starvation response. It has more to do with, you don't want to spend your, I don't know the word, it's not willpower. You don't want to spend your psychic energy, the energy you have available to you, you don't want to fritter it away. It cost me enough psychic energy to be abstinent and follow a food plan for several months. It took me. I didn't want to have to force myself to try and do anything else. The food plan was all I could handle. Now that may just be me, but that's how I would handle that.
No more questions.
All right. So let's talk about what are we going to do about the starvation response? Because it's just a biochemical response. So, you know, it's not like you can will your way out of it or anything like that. You have to deal with it. You have to, you know, you go through it. Some people will have worse ones than other people, but you still have to deal with it. And you can. So usually when we hit the starvation response in our weight loss career, make it stop. So we relapse and regain all of our fat and then some. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the coping strategies I used to get through the starvation response. They are in no order of importance or anything. I'm just throwing them out there. Some of them will resonate with you, some of them won't. Maybe you'll come up with some of your own. But I just want to start the creative juices flowing so that you can find some of this stuff for yourself to use. So the first thing I used was distraction. Sometimes when the feelings got really intense, I was able to distract myself until they passed. I'm going to show you, I'm going to read them to you. I had a whole list, if I can find them, a whole list of distractions. Oops, you can't really see it. 25 of them I wrote up. I'm going to read them to you. 1, wipe down kitchen counters. 2, wipe down the washer and dryer. 3, cut cross-stitch fabric. 4, declutter books. 5, wash the wine glasses. 6, wash teacups. 7, inventory kitty toys and see what needs to be replaced. 8, moisturize my cuticles on my hands. 9, sweep the patio. 10, wipe down the patio furniture. 11, brush the kitty. 12, shave. I mean, that always takes a certain amount of time and you're in the water. 13, dust ceiling fans. 14, clean out the fridge. 15, not eating, by the way, wiping down. 15, straighten the shoes on the shoe tree. 16, design jewelry projects. 17, design cross-stitch projects. 18, wipe down the laundry room. 19, sweep the laundry room. 20, wipe down kitchen appliances. 21, reorganize the junk drawers in the kitchen. 22, reorganize the drawers under my primary bath sink. 23, reorganize the drawers in the primary closet. 24, reorganize my nightstand, and 25, reorganize my jewelry box. Some of these took 3 minutes, some of them took a half an hour. Depending on what was going on and how bad I was feeling, that's what I did. Okay, so just as long as the distraction works for you, do it. Go to a meeting. Zoom meetings are so convenient now. I mean, you go onto the OA website at any time of the day and you can find meetings wherever. There are always meetings going on. Also, there are a ton of recovery podcasts out there, a ton of YouTube recordings. I mean, Herb K has a ton of stuff. All the old AA speakers are out there. There's just so much on there. Go to the Surrender School website, listen to some of our recordings. I often combined distraction with meetings by listening to program podcasts while cross-stitching. I did double duty. And that one worked really well for me. So try some intense self-care. Sometimes if the feeling was just overwhelming, I would focus on some kind of radical self-care that was more physical based. Things like taking a nap in a heated blanket, or taking a hot bath, or doing some yoga nidra. For those of you who don't know what yoga nidra is, it's not physical poses. It's kind of a relaxation meditation. And if you go into YouTube and you put in yoga nidra, yoga and then Nidra, you'll come up with tons of those, and they're kind of like sort of like guided meditations, but they're extremely relaxing. I would highly suggest doing that. Your body will thank you for it. I focused on doing something I knew would make my physical body feel good, because it feels like a physical assault, this starvation response thing. Some people use exercise, like I said before, but it's not for me. I know it works for some people and they should do it if it really works for them, but that's not me. You could go get a pedicure or a massage, or ask your spouse to brush your hair, or ask them to rub your tootsies, or just, just rub your back gently. Sometimes that can be enough just to feel better physically. So that was kind of intense self-care for me, was around physical self-care. Another thing I did was I set myself up for success. So in other words, I planned ahead. I knew my body would be going through this, so I really planned ahead with my food. I developed a system that I still use today, where I did food prep once a week, where I made all my food for the week. I weighed and measured it, packaged it up, stuck it in the fridge. Mealtime would take just a few minutes for me to prepare. This made everything automatic and easy for me. Automatic is the word you want. You don't want to have to think. You don't want to have to make decisions at meal times when this is going on. I don't want to make spontaneous choices about what to eat. So I would have it all in the fridge. I would throw it in a bowl. In 3 minutes, voila, dinner was served. So that was one of the things I did. Another thing I did is that I set myself up for success by minimizing as much as I could stressful things that I could avoid for a little bit. Like, I didn't try to move or change jobs or paint the house while I was going through this. I respected the process my body was going through. I surrendered to the reality of what was going on in my body, and I made allowances for it. I didn't expect my body to do something that it couldn't. There were days that if all I did that day was manage to be abstinent and follow my food plan, win, big win, because sometimes that's all I was capable of doing. So I didn't have a lot of expectations of myself while I was going through this process. Okay, so I tried to anticipate problems or obstacles in following my food plan. It's that old saying, it's better to plan and prepare than to repent and despair. I love that saying. So for example, I knew that going into the lunchroom at my work would be a disaster for me, because there was always so much crap that was brought in for the employees to eat. So what I did is I started bringing my larger thermos, big thermos of my own decaf iced tea, and I drank that all day instead of going into the lunchroom to get tea or something to drink. That way I didn't have to go buy all that crap, as in walk by all that crap. had my thing that I was going to drink all day. I packed my little lunch. I had it in a little cooler. I didn't store it in the fridge because I didn't want to go in the lunchroom. Carried my tea, carried my little lunch bag. That way I could avoid it. I didn't want to expect myself to do things that I knew would be really difficult. I wanted to give myself a break. It's hard enough being abstinent and following a food plan. And so that's what I did. Here's another example of anticipating problems. When going to a restaurant, I always look up the menu online and choose what I'm going to order before I go to the restaurant. Before I even leave the house, I do this. When the starvation response is raging, the last thing you should expect yourself to be able to do is choose an abstinent meal when presented with so many different options on a menu. Expecting yourself to do that is being in denial of your disease. Here's another example of anticipating problems. When I go out to dinner with friends who I know are going to order a dessert, I bring a special dessert tea with me. So when they order their dessert, I order hot water and I bring my own little special tea bag that makes me feel like I'm having something special too. The Republic of Tea makes a lot of different dessert teas. My favorite is chocolate peppermint and lemon chiffon. They are delicious. They're, obviously there's no sugar, there's no artificial sweetener in it. But it makes me feel like I'm having something a little special too. Stash Tea makes a tea called Christmas in Paris. And it tastes like, to me anyway, like a York peppermint patty. No sweet, there's no sweet to it, but it's a lovely taste of peppermint with some chocolate and a little vanilla and a little bit of lavender. It's delicious. Christopher Bean also, and this would be like if I were doing a dinner party at my home and there was going to be dessert served, I would do some special decaf coffee for myself. Christopher Bean makes a lot of different wonderful decaf coffee flavors. My favorites are blueberry crumble, caramel macchiato, chocolate glazed donut, caramel walnut shortbread, and almond fudge biscotti. Obviously, none of them have sugar. None of them have a sweetness taste to them. None of them have any artificial sweeteners. But they make me feel like I'm having a little something special too. And that's enough to get me through that situation. Let's not forget about diving into the steps. I dove into step work and program literature with abandon. I mean, it's kind of hard to binge while you're reading the big book. You may want to work something out with your sponsor, like daily contact or answering a step question each day. Don't be afraid to ask your sponsor for the support that you need. There are also all kinds of wonderful workbooks out there for taking a deep dive into the steps. There's a ton of them. There's all the ones that are in program. Excuse me. There's ones from Hazelden. There's step study question books like Herb K has a great one. Oh gosh, there are so many different ones. And just take a deep dive and steep yourself in program. It helps me a lot through that whole process of the starvation response. You also want to decrease food cues because remember, the starvation response makes us much more susceptible to food cues. So I try to keep food cues to a minimum. No food is stored on the countertops. My spouse's treats are stored in a cupboard that I never have an occasion to go into. There is nothing in that cupboard that I will ever need. That way, there is absolutely zero reason to go into it and accidentally see some of her treats. I never watch commercials when I'm watching TV. I either play games on my phone or I cross stitch. I do not need to watch food porn while my brain thinks I'm starving. Now, this one may seem a little weird, but it really worked well for me. So after learning the science to understand the symptoms my body was feeling, I learned how to talk through the physical and emotional feelings I was having. So for example, remember those 5-alarm fire feelings that I talked about earlier? I would talk through those with my higher power. So it would go something like this. Okay, higher power, I know my brain and body think I'm starving. I know my body and brain are just trying to take care of me, but my disease has them fooled. They aren't seeing the situation clearly. They are mistaken. Please help me see these feelings I'm having differently. Please help me to remember that this is just my body and brain beginning the healing process from my addiction, from the hormonal and neurochemical dysregulation of my disease. Please help me love my body and brain through it. That's it. I tried to reinterpret the symptoms I was having into something more positive. Yes, the symptoms didn't feel good, but they were a positive sign of healing. And last and absolutely not least is higher power reliance. I really relied on my higher power more than I ever do during this time in my process, in my recovery process. I rely on my higher power every day, multiple times a day, all day long. But when I was in the starvation response, I was like, hold my hand, because it was so difficult. And I was able to see my higher power as an ally I could go to and rely on when this stuff felt overwhelming to me. I relied on my higher power not to take away the feelings, but to help me walk through them. I had no expectation that abstinence and following my food plan would be easy and painless. I did not expect that. This is what my body does when I'm going through this part of the re-regulation of my body. But my higher power can help me walk through it without eating. And I relied on my higher power 100% for that. Now, as I said before, the good news is that the starvation response doesn't last forever. Mine only lasted about 3 or 4 months. And it wasn't like bad, and then it stopped. It gradually, over that 3 and 4 months, got less and less and less. So you can do this. You absolutely can do this. Now, are there any questions?
I have a couple about the starvation response.
Mm-hmm.
One is, does the starvation response have anything to do with dopamine, serotonin, or similar things?
Okay, dopamine and the reward circuitry in the brain does activate at this time, but I've kind of artificially separated it out so that I can explain from a physical allergy point of view what's going on in your body. The brain does do things, yes, with the reward circuitry, but I will go over that in the next session.
Very cool. And then, is the starvation response the reason my housemate's food starts screaming to me after I've been abstinent for a while, even though it usually doesn't bother me?
Yes, 100% yes.
Okay, there are 2 more that just came in.
Okay.
How would hitting a weight loss plateau play into this? Would that be an indication that maybe this is going on?
No, a weight loss plateau is going to be something else. I don't know exactly. I've never seen anything in anything that I've read regarding the cause of plateaus. I know, I mean, some people will say it's because of the downregulation of the metabolism that we did talk about today. And that's likely part of it. Also, as you're losing weight, you start out with this food plan, and then you've lost some weight and lost some weight. And the food plan that you're eating essentially allows you to stay at that one weight. I have had in my journey over 80 pounds. I had several different plateaus. And of course, the hardest plateau to get over was the last little bit. And what I had to do was trust the process. Where I wind up is none of my business. That's my higher power's business. So I let go of the notion of a goal weight because I just kept doing the weight loss plan that I had been losing weight on. And I just trusted the process and I stuck with it. And I let it be okay if I stopped there. Now, I will tell you where I wound up was lower than my initial goal weight that I even had for myself. But it's not by a lot, but it still was a little bit less than where I thought I was, the range that I thought I was going to be in. But I had to, or I was going to make myself insane. I had to let go of the number, let my higher power decide it, trust the process, and just keep going.
Okay, I do have a few more questions. Is it possible to be in a state where you're abstinent and eating less calories but not losing weight?
Yes. Yeah, I think it is. And that's kind of just what we talked about.
Yeah.
You know, the whole plateau thing. And I'll tell you what the way that I put it in my brain to be okay. The thing that I wanted, and maybe it's because I'll be 60 in a month, but the thing that I really wanted more than the vanity was I wanted the sanity. I wanted the craziness to stop. I wanted to stop driving around and binging in random parking lots. I wanted to stop sneaking food. I wanted to stop hiding food. I wanted to stop feeling like I hated myself. That's what I wanted more than to fit in size 8 jeans. And when I follow the food plan and I let go of the number and I focus on the spiritual solution the program offers, and I focus on emotional sobriety and learning how to cope with life, I don't have that insanity in my brain. And if I weigh more than I think I should or I want to, I don't care. What I really wanted from recovery was to stop hating myself. And that happens when I'm abstinent and I follow a food plan, regardless of what I weigh. And that's how I decided to deal with that problem. But when I stuck with it, and I do not know the reason for this, I do not know the biology of this, I started losing weight again after a while at the plateau. I just kept at it. I hope, I don't know how helpful that is, but that's what I did.
it seems like it gets harder to regain my abstinence every time. Is my brain fighting harder every time, or does it just seem that way?
No, you're not imagining it. Your brain does fight harder. And we're going to talk about that in the next session. Specifically, I'll explain why that happens. It's not your imagination. It is harder.
Sure.
I just want to give you the teaser for next time. So next time we're going to be exploring the first part of the mental obsession. We've talked about the physical allergy, the science, the biochemistry of the physical allergy. Now we're going to talk about this next time, the science of the mental obsession, the biochemistry of our mental obsession. We're going to do the first part next week, where we're going to talk about the neurotransmitter dopamine and the reward circuitry in the brain. We're also going to talk more in detail, as I promised we would, about how our unconscious brain actually makes the decision about our eating. And we don't get the message until after the brain has already decided we're going to eat. And again, that's where I think the strange mental blank spot is. Okay. Joy, should I do the serenity prayer?
See you next week.